You did all of that. Thank you. But there's so much to be done. I'm proud of our community for deciding that we're not perfect, but we're going to show up and we're going to try. Because tonight you're going to hear from some speakers who will tell you how some of that showing up and some of that trying actually works. We're here tonight to save what we love for our city, our state, and our country. I believe that we can be more kind. We can give the benefit of the doubt and meet people where they are, no matter their background or political affiliation. Thank you also to the staff and support of Buckman Public House who had that awesome happy hour. Maybe some of us went to that tonight. Excellent. Thank you to Walker Tracker and Switchboard for the donations that make us this all volunteer run event possible. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you to Catalyst Law and Nasty Women Get Stuff Done for their contributions in order for us to rent this space. And thank you to all of the organizations who contributed so that other smaller organizations with less capacity could be here tonight. Thank you. Thank you so much. I want to also quickly recognize all of our volunteers who are here tonight who helped put this together. Can you guys just raise your hand? Give them a round of applause. Thank you so much. And then also a special thanks to Morel Inc. for donating all the printed signs and the Portland storage fixtures, who is actually going to be, they're closing down, but there's an opportunity for organizations on December 11th, nonprofits, to get some free gear, which is great. And then a huge shout out to Shauna Noah and Steph Barnhart, two women that are leading the revolution by making events that bring people together happen across the city. This event could not have happened this year without them. Will you please give them a round of applause? Thank you. And last but not least, thank you so much to the thought leaders across the city who talked about this event to make it happen. Rakaya Adams, Sarah Guest, Ana Del Rocio, Carol Collymore, Dana Ghazi, Israel Baer, Mitch Doherty, and millions of others. Thank you for talking to me. Also, you can join the conversation. This is the organizations list. Join the conversation at What Now PDX on Instagram. And I just want to say thank you again, and I'll leave you with this piece from poet Ijalma Umabinyo. Nobody warned you that the women whose feet you cut from running would give birth to daughters with wings. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Oh, hi. My name is Ana Del Rocio. It's so great to be back. 1 year ago, I stood on this exact stage and bared my soul to a room full of strangers. I talked about what mattered most to me, my 2 children. I spoke about how desperately our children needed to see us fighting back. That the story would not end with the bad guy winning. So 1 year ago, we took on a seemingly impossible fight, challenging an incumbent in a politically mixed district with an electorate that had never before seen a person of color on the ballot. All this while I simultaneously worked a full-time job and mothered 2 young children. Every step of the way on that campaign was groundbreaking. We made a history. We raised well over $30,000, knocked on hundreds of doors, earned endorsements from organizations like NARAL and Planned Parenthood that had never before endorsed candidates on the school board. We earned unprecedented endorsements from Governor Robert Roberts, Congressman Earl Blumenauer, and dozens of community leaders that had never before paid this much attention to a school board race. We did this work, this grueling, constant, and at times painful work, without hesitation or apology, because we knew that's what it would take to stand on the right side of history. We were invested in this fight. We knew that education mattered, schools mattered, our children mattered. We fought hard, and then we won. For the first time, the district of David Douglas, a district with over 60% people of color, had elected not only 1, but 2 women of color to its board of directors. The night of the election in May, I remember the exact moment that my friend Roberto, who now is a policy director for Causa, approached me to tell me that I was ahead by several hundred votes. I remember his voice and I remember his words, but the rest of that night was a complete haze. I think I gave a speech at some point, but I have no idea what I said. I really felt as though I was living someone else's life, as though I was in a land that I had dreamed about but never experienced. The land of justice. The land where working hard, harder than you've ever had, harder than the competition, meant you succeeded. Up until then, my life had been one in which I'd worked harder, longer, smarter than others, only to keep falling behind. So to know that we had taken on this impossible fight and won was all the medicine I needed to heal a lifetime's worth of disappointment. But it's the students and the families of David Douglas that were by far the greatest victors. They now benefit not only from an elected board that more fairly represents them and includes an educator's voice, but also from comprehensive birth control access in their school-based health center, a very basic health service that up until this year had been critically absent for young women in David Douglas. Every school board meeting since then has made the experience more and more real. My disbelief gave way to gratitude, and gratitude eventually gave way to pride. I wish the story ended there, but it doesn't. 2,000 people filled this auditorium last year because we were ready to fight. We were ready to resist the Trump agenda. We were fired up, determined, and unstoppable. But also, what we must talk about now is that underneath that passion and that drive was a very deep and very heavy grief. To say that our country is under siege by an agenda of hatred is not an understatement. Our communities, my communities, are under attack. We know it's only going to get worse. Last month, 4 elementary schools in the David Douglas School District, elementary schools serving our youngest children, were vandalized by racist graffiti. A porta potty was burned. Property was destroyed. As quickly as our custodial staff worked to clean the hate speech, some families had to read those words as they dropped off their children in the morning. Never before in the entire history of the David Douglas School District had an attack of this nature occurred. Let's think about that. A district in East Portland that is predominantly made up of communities of color elects people of color to its school board for the first time. Then 4 elementary schools, over half of all the elementary schools in the district, were strategically targeted. For what purpose? To intimidate, to attack, to terrorize. The pain and the trauma inflicted by racism in this country is deep and impossible to contain. It is cumulative. It is consuming. And for people of color, it is literally in our cells. Running for school board had been my coping mechanism for this grief. As long as I was fighting for votes, I didn't have to deal with or recognize the depth of my sorrow over what was happening to our country, over the possibly gruesome fate awaiting myself and my children. By choosing to spend time, all of my time, knocking doors and holding fundraisers, I didn't have to worry about processing my pain or my son's pain or my community's pain. But the truth is, no matter how many elections I win, I'm still deeply broken. My family is broken, quite literally. As a consequence of the time and energy I invested into this campaign, I lost relationships with family members. I lost my ability to be fully present at the dinner table because I had conveniently occupied my mind with campaign field math and persuasion strategies. But when the campaign ended, emotionally and energetically, I collapsed. With the fight behind me, I could see my attempts at erasing my pain had been. Yes, I stood up for my community and dedicated myself to public service, but I also became distant from myself. Grief has a funny way of making you feel alone, forcing you to move through the motions of everyday life without ever really showing up at all. So what's the solution? I want us as activists, as movement leaders, and as elected officials to stop pretending that the only fights we must wage are external. We cannot create the world we wish to see without first turning inwards, freeing ourselves from the suffering we so wish to eradicate in the experience of others. It's not possible to do the work of liberating entire communities and countries without first being accountable for our own liberation. We must tread lightly with each other. We must name that there is a deep collective grief caused by this political climate. We must turn inwards now, and we must do the work of healing ourselves before we can heal each other. My call to everyone tonight is to name this grief. Name your pain. Work as tirelessly for your own well-being as you work for your communities. Yes, there is a place in the movement for electoral justice, but we cannot elect people that are broken. Broken people can't lead. And I believe so strongly in diversifying our leadership bodies, in electing courageous and visionary leaders, that it's incumbent upon me to implore us to put our well-being first. We need each other to be well and to be whole. In January, I'll be stepping into a new role as the first Oregon State Director of Color PAC, an organization focused on electing people of color, so more people like me, to public office. I'll be full-time working to get people of color on boards, commissions, public sector leadership roles. It's work that I believe will fundamentally transform the face of Oregon politics. It's work that will put us on a path to more healing and less grief. It's work that I believe will lead us in the right direction, of taking on fights that honor the need for complete liberation, personally and collectively. I was asked to nominate another speaker tonight, someone whose story I think that you all need to hear. That person is JT Flowers. JT embodies everything about public leadership that I seek to emulate. He is whip smart, visionary, and kind. He was born and raised in Portland, and he's here tonight to bless the mic with his own story that I'll let him tell. But before doing that, I really want to thank you all from the bottom of my heart for bearing witness to a small part of my journey. I want to extend gratitude to all the individuals and organizations that made my election to this board possible. I can't name everyone, but I want to highlight a few people that hold me up every single day. Commissioner Jessica Vega Peterson, Family Forward and the Mother PAC, New Leaders Council and Emerge Oregon, training more candidates. Dawn Jones Redstone, producer and director of the film We Have Our Ways, which you should all look up and see. And lastly, my children, Tupac and Inti. This is all for you. Thanks.
How you guys doing? Give me a second to fix this podium. I'm a little bit taller than Anna. Hey, how's everybody doing? All right? It's a tremendous honor for me to be standing in front of you tonight. I want to take a second to thank Natalie and Sarah and all the other brilliant women who made this event possible. Can we please give it up for them one time? I also want to extend a huge thank you to Anna, who is the sole reason that I'm standing on the stage before you right now. Your courage, your strength, your immense commitment to the people serve as a guiding light to so many, myself included. Thank you for all that you do and all that you are. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank the two most formative presences in my young life, my mother and my grandmother, both of whom are here with us today. I know it wasn't always easy having to raise a knuckle-headed, brown-skinned baby boy in the heart of Northeast Portland, but we made it through the mud. My grandmother is 91 years old and still working. She is a proud daughter of the Badlands of South Dakota, a walking embodiment of the unmistakable sense of grit forged into a generation by the fires of the Great Depression. She has seen poverty and comfort, health and hard times. Armed with a fighter's heart and a high school diploma, she ventured west in search of something more. Her eyes locked onto the road ahead, the road to Oregon, the state she has called home for almost 50 years. My mother, like her mother before her, is a foot soldier of freedom. For 30 long years, she has served our community in the trenches. She has felt pride and agony, abandonment and embrace. For as long as I can remember, her bedroom has boasted a perpetually unhinged door and a floor strewn with books. Single motherhood has never afforded her the luxury of hiding, nor of turning the page to start a chapter that is finally hers and hers alone. At 16, she packed her things and set out north towards Albina, the district she has called home ever since. These women, the women who made me, who stand me upright, saw something in this place, something worth chasing after, worth reaching for. I was born from the breastbone of this city, from the corner of Northeast Mallory in Alberta to a neighborhood that looked much different than the one many of you likely biked through on your way here this evening. My legs soon grew strong from trudging, my ears familiar with the soliloquies of midnight sirens. School would take me all the way across the Willamette River, far from the ring of gunshots, the line outside the county building, and the bowels of a broken education system. The first 18 years of my life were spent running as fast and as far away as my feet could possibly carry me. In communities like the one I come from, in working class and low-income communities, and communities of color, circumstance is the perpetual hound at our heels. We understand the difference between ignorance and being born into undereducation, between what it means to be prone to criminality and disproportionately over-policed. Our voices reverberate with unvarnished truth, brash in tone and unbridled in their pursuit of a fair shot. There are few things that we have not seen. As a 9-year-old child, I was kicked out of elementary school for behavioral issues. I've been suspended for responding to racism, arrested and roughed up, failed by teachers who knew that their grade could be the difference between going to college and standing at a gas pump. Too often, we Portlanders have reached for bootstraps and found nothing but bare feet. But there is no genius quite like that of a people forced to mold themselves out of the mud. If it teaches us anything, it's that an image of what could be, a light worth reaching for and marching towards, arrogantly expectant as it might be, is what makes struggle survivable. It was that audacity, that naive, childlike belief that tomorrow can be pulled from the clouds that carried a lost boy 3,000 miles off the corner of Northeast Mallory in Alberta and walked him across a stage, a college graduate. Today, our city finds itself at a similar crossroads, questioning whether we are running towards some particular light off in the distance or simply running from the hound biting at our heels. At this very moment, 4,177 of our neighbors lack a home, a roof over their heads. Tens of thousands more are just 1 or 2 missed paychecks away from having an eviction notice slapped on their door. Our native brothers and sisters whose land we stand on yet consistently fail to stand for have a harder time accessing employment than any other demographic group in the state. In Oregon and across this country, ICE agents are poaching phone numbers, texting our friends and our family members, forcing their way into private homes and stripping sick children from hospital beds in an effort to tear our communities apart. There is flesh and bone and breath on the other end of these conversations, of convenings like this one. Over the past year, we have stared our demons in the eye. We have resolved ourselves to resist. We have insulated ourselves from oppressive federal dictates and flooded into the streets with rage. We have battled and been broken, picked our bodies off the ground, and healed ourselves in collective embrace. Our government has performed triage. Our people have held each other up and held the line. But building a fort is not the same as building a future. If the solutions we seek are to be lasting and systemic, if they are to ripple across generations, to spill into the outstretched hands of our children and their children after them, they must extend beyond reflex, beyond disgust and righteous indignation. Here in Portland and across this state, we must, now more than ever, be in the business of building tomorrow, of looking up, of reaching out, and of pulling a new day from the sky. The great hope of this country, of cities like Portland, like Hillsborough, like Gresham, is that one day these weathered hands of ours might forge a reality where both justice and opportunity are universally present and evenly dispersed, where a single father mopping floors to feed his children can work a single job and afford to pay rent, where our transgender siblings don't have to explain themselves to anybody, where a woman can walk down the street, can walk into a workplace without having to wonder whether she'll be harassed today, where a person struggling with the disease of addiction can access life-saving care before it's too late, where an undocumented immigrant can dream of the day she can finally stop running, and where a black boy born on the wrong side of the river can look up at the stars and imagine with childlike wonder what this world has in store for him. If you are here tonight because you believe in the fundamental power of opportunity, because you believe in the humanity of your neighbor, regardless of how they look, how they speak, how they present, how they pray, if you believe not only in the hideousness of our past, not only in the disappointments of our present, but in the boundless potential of our collective future, then let us extend an arm together. Let us reach for a city where every resident can afford a home and a hot meal. Let us reach for a city that prioritizes its workers over its tourist appeal. Let us reach for a healthcare system that is not just universal in name, but universally accessible, for a brand of politics that centers the brilliance, the experience, and the leadership of women and people of color, for the dream of my mother and her mother before her. Let us reach as far as our bones allow us, and further still, for there is a future at this city's fingertips, a reality that we can drag into existence if, and only if, we are brave enough to look up again, to reach out into the clouds, and to pull tomorrow into being. Thank you.
I think we should just sit with those words for a little bit. Portland, Oregon is the 9th largest Native American population in the United States. 70,000 Native Americans. That's a decent number. I often think of equity, and in talking with state, county, nonprofits, equity is an abstraction. Any abstraction needs qualifier. Is what you consider equity from a settler colonial perspective, or is it coming from indigeneity? How many people in your organizations are Native American? Is it equal to, or is there equity there, or is there no conversation had at all? Is that informed by systemic issues of American identity in continued erasure and a genocide process? These are thoughts I think about. I was emailing with my friend last year, leading up to the election. We're both liberals, we're both Native American writers. He more so famous than I. I'm more of a poor man's version of that writer. Emails back and forth. Eventually we moved to text. Leading up to that moment, starting to feel the letdown. And then it happened, and our letdown, we paused, went to bed. We weren't sleeping together or near each other. It's just, he was in Seattle, I'm down here in Portland, and I did my exercise to make sure I go to sleep. 4, 7, 8. Breathe in for a count of 4, hold it for 7, breathe out for 8. A couple of times through and I fell asleep. Woke up the next day, took the Max to work downtown, and since I'm Native American and I look the part, I was very aware of white people all around me in that ride. And it was very scary. It became a triggering moment where I realized, as much as I lived here in the Portland area, 97% white, wasn't really a consideration. I can become somewhat insular in my approaches to being in this environment. That train ride to work, I made conscious effort to, I was standing on the doorway, in the doorway opposite for where people enter onto the train, and I just looked out the window. I didn't make any eye contact with anyone on the train. Most people face inward, making eye contact. I faced out, and I continue to do that. I mean, it might look strange, this large Lakota male facing outside, not inwards with everyone on the train, but it's scary. I don't know, I don't trust anyone. And on that train ride to work, it was intensified. I did all my exercises to limit my anxiety. What was going on last year, too, was issues in Standing Rock. Within the Native community, this is a continuance of issues that are long-standing with the United States. Everything that was represented there, what was going on there in Standing Rock. It wasn't until Dance's Wolves that I heard a lot of non-native say Lakota words, or saying Miniwichoni, which if you want to hear it, it could sound like mini chonies, but Miniwichoni. I'm Minikoji Lakota. Minikoji translates people by the river. I come from river people. I've been in the Portland area since 1991. We are river people here. I suggested in an email being invited into this event tonight that we open up with honoring the people of the land, because this is all Indian land. I operate from a different world view. My perspective is different. My relationship to my surrounding is different. My relationship to settler colonial folks is different. So in thinking about the commonality and at least some aspect, the metaphor of water, how we are connected here in the Northwest. I mean, some people talk about the weather, and that's one of my pet peeves, and I really hate it. Because we live in a temperate rainforest, and it's supposed to do what it's supposed to do, right? We take in water, water goes through the water systems here, goes into fish, goes back up into the sky, comes back around. So we're connected that way. In creating my book, Wakpawanagi, Ghost River, Lakota word Wakpa, a better translation, that means river, waterway. Wanagi, a better translation, a more literal translation, instead of ghost, is a spirit that didn't have a form. So building this book around the connectivity of everyone here in this area and at different points of view and different points in their lives and how they interact. I was doing social work at the time, working with child welfare system, trying to affect the disproportionality of Native American youth, children in the foster care system, and also working with Section 8 vouchers, thinking once a family is stabilized in housing, their children will return. This is true. With all my families I worked with, children are returned. Working with families, as we have these conversations of intergenerational and historical trauma, working with Native American families, and there are different parts in the spectrum of understanding our decolonization and getting closer to our indigeneity. I'm reminded that as indigenous folks here on this continent, we're post-apocalyptic. We're generations post-apocalypse. Imagine The Walking Dead as manifest destiny. That's zombies, that's ideology, that's worldview. Coming in, disrupting communities, disrupting people, disrupting relationships to each other and landscape and other entities. So in thinking about water, opening poem of my collection, The Well. When the well was deeper than you recalled, relationships were shaped by its structure. Its waters affect all you touched, and we dipped our heads into these buckets darkly filled with your family story. Cousin, look what our mud has handprinted on our cousins. We filter the soot from image kept in your trunks, stowed in your basements. Some fires this liquid can extinguish, we ignite them with our tears. Some wells were buried years ago, some were half dug. Cousin, my back is strong. We'll tend these waters together. We'll dig wells for our neighbors. Cousin, we'll pull through together. In order to intervene on some level with historical intergenerational trauma, it has to begin with folks. It has to begin with individuals making changes, and then as those individuals make change, that spreads around, changes the trajectory of potential negative outcomes. So in that piece, we're all at different stages of becoming fully realized what we are, but that is informed by your worldview. Are you getting close to some sense of indigeneity and what that means? Are you continuing the settler colonial process, inadvertently unaware or deadly aware? The last poem is called Ghost River. I'm mostly water. There has been family swept under by raw currents. I'm from planters by the river. We dredge riverbed bones. Water is faces lined blue. Red horses bay bodies hooked from fish line. And what was sown, brown hands dug free. I'm mostly other people. Family is pulled pailful from source. I'm from river people. We prep the light from matted hair. Water catches flame. The black horses hoof rock, having them like thin infant skulls. And what was sown, brown hands dug free. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I need you to stand up for me, please. Stretch out a little bit. And I would like you to introduce yourself to a person around you that you don't know. Go. I'm going to be around the back. All right, start to wrap your conversations up, please. You have about 15 seconds. All right, I see some folks sitting down. I'm a little loud. All right, I'm going to introduce our next round of speakers. I am completely blown away by what we received from these incredible speakers, from Natalie, from Anna, from JT, from Trevino. Just another round of applause for those folks. I mean, oh. JT, I hope I am not misquoting you. There was something I heard as I was coming in the back to listen to you speak. There's no genius like a people forced to mold themselves out of mud, and it just gave me goosebumps. Anybody else feel that way? Ooh. Incredible. So I'm here to share with you the bios of the last three speakers tonight. And Aldo, Lindsay, and Israel are just powerhouses in our community as well. I just met Aldo tonight. He's an amazing human being. Aldo is a DACA recipient from the state of Colima, Mexico. Aldo grew up in the Willamette Valley, where Aldo worked on extensive electoral and community-based organizing with low-income and immigrant families. As a child of migrant farm workers, Aldo's upbringing instilled in him the desire to fight for the underserved. In the past, Aldo has worked as the Special Projects Coordinator for the Capacas Leadership Institute and as a field organizer for Acción Política Pucinista. Aldo also serves as a board member for Farm Worker Housing Development Corporation and is a very active advocate in the national movement to pass a Clean Dream Act bill. I mean, that's huge, amazing work. Most recently, Aldo has started a new role as a policy director for the Oregon Latino Health Coalition. All right, next is one of my favorite people in the world, Lindsay Murphy. Lindsay Murphy has produced and hosted a dope little kids science show on YouTube called The Fab Lab with Crazy Aunt Lindsay since 2010. Has anybody watched that channel? Anyone seen it? It's so good. This labor of love has gotten Lindsay invited to places like Harvard and Google to speak about things like diversity and creative media and STEM, as well as numerous live TV and online show hosting opportunities. And Lindsay's life is all about creating and championing meaningful life experiences and important things in this world. She is really, really focused on helping people with everything that she does and teaching children and building bridges and adding value to people's lives. That might explain why people call Lindsay a natural salesman. I would also call Lindsay a natural teacher. I love watching her with students, and the first time I met Lindsay, I think we were supposed to check in for like 45 minutes, and we lost track of time, and it was 2.5 hours later. So she's just a really powerful person who cares and feels and is grateful and appreciative beyond words and measured every single person who has ever and will ever contribute to Lindsay's success. She wrote this, isn't this amazing? Starting with the so many who came before her. And last but not least, Israel Bayer. How many people are here to see Israel tonight? Yes, I'm a huge fan of Israel. I have seen his work for years, and I'm so honored to be able to chat with him tonight. He's the outgoing executive director of Street Roots, Portland's award-winning street newspaper, one of my favorite newspapers to buy. And he's worked with the street newspaper movement for nearly 15 years. He's the founding member of the Welcome Home Coalition, a coalition of nonprofit and business groups working to secure more affordable housing for the region. He also served as one of the spokespeople for the Yes for Affordable Homes, the Affordable Homes ballot measure that passed last November, which is really exciting. Israel has also been an advocate on a range of social justice issues, including the legalization of marijuana, the civil rights of people on the streets, and more. He believes that in time when our country is divided, it's both love and unity that brings us together. And as Israel reminds us, we must continue to fight on. So without further ado, I'd like to invite our first speaker, Aldo.
What JT said, ditto. This is a little awkward. Yeah, right? This is a little awkward to me. I was told this was a whole different event. I didn't know we were announcing our candidacy for President of the United States of America. Yeah. All right. So my name is Aldo again. Like it was mentioned, October 5th, 2018. October 5th of 2018. This is an important date for me. That is when my presence here in this country expires. It is the day that I am supposed to go back to shadows of uncertainty and of no status. You see, in 2012, thanks to the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, I finally got permission to stay here in my own home for a limited period of time. I went from being simply undocumented to being a full-on lawful alien. I thought it was going to sound better. They said, hey, you're one of those good immigrants, aren't you? A young, professional, not a criminal, not a rapist, not a drug dealer. We'll make you a deal. Tell us about yourself. Where do you live? How do you get here? Who's your family? Where does your family live? Additionally, gather a couple $1,000s for some legal fees, pass an extensive background check, send us a check of about $500, and we'll let you stay here for 2 years without the fear of deportation. And when that period is done, you can just come back and do it over again. Obviously, pay the additional fees once again, and you can stay again for another 2 years. And by the way, the information that you provide us may or may not affect you or work against you in the future. Just an FYI. Okay, so that's not exactly what they said. They didn't come knocking on my door, and this is the script they read to me, but this is how I picture it in my head as far as what the DACA program is and was. So there was always a lot of risk with this, and I understood that, which is why there's a lot of hesitation from a lot of my peers to apply in the first place. I thought about my family. I sat down to talk about it with my parents, and without hesitation, they said, "Do it, mijo. Apply. Don't worry about us, because we'll be okay if you're okay. Look, you'll be able to work and to drive and to continue to chase after your dreams." You see, there are two very common things that come with being an undocumented immigrant. One is we always get scraps. And we have to be okay with that because, hey, it's better than what we had back home, right? That's the reason we came here. And two is we sacrifice ourselves for the well-being of our children, no matter the cost, no matter the risk. The very basis of our journey to the land of the free and the home of the brave is fueled by these two ideals, love and sacrifice. I was only 6 years old when my family first immigrated to the U.S. from the state of Colima. Economic distress and the lack of opportunities pushed my parents to leave everything behind, loved ones, their past, their memories, their friends, everything, and go in search of the elusive American dream. When we settled in Woodburn, Oregon, my parents, they worked what seemed to be endless hours in berry fields and canneries and nurseries across the beautiful Willamette Valley. And as seasonal farm workers, Mom and Dad endured abuse, inhumane working conditions, and wage theft, just so that my siblings and I could go to school and pursue our dreams. They wanted a better life for us, and one that didn't change with the passing of the seasons. One that wasn't lived backbent under the scorching sun in order to put food on the table for those that oppress us. Now, I'm not here to tell you the perfect dreamer story that you've probably heard before. The one about the valedictorian who graduated with a 4.8 GPA and was offered a full-ride scholarship to Harvard to become a neurosurgeon. You know, that the one that's easier to stand by and endorse. Unfortunately, the story of immigrants, it's much more complex and multidimensional than that. The life of an undocumented individual cannot be put into one single box. Contrary to what is usually portrayed, most undocumented individuals don't want to be lawyers, don't want to be doctors. They simply have other aspirations. But that doesn't mean that their story is not worthy. That doesn't mean that they don't deserve to be here and pursue their happiness. All over the country, the other dreamers, the forgotten ones, are contributing greatly to the respective communities, and oftentimes their value remains mostly unseen and underappreciated. Some of them are picking your food, some of them are building your homes, and then some of them are tackling inequities in their communities head-on through community organizing and advocacy. I've spent the last couple of years developing my leadership skills in order to become an agent of change and dismantle systems of oppression. This year, I had the great opportunity to work to extend healthcare coverage to children in our state, regardless of immigration status. You may know this as the Cover All Kids campaign. In this campaign, I learned to utilize my personal story to organize in a very difficult political climate. My experience as someone who grew up without ever seeing a doctor because of my lack of health insurance allowed me to connect with families in a very unique way. Now, as some of you may know, on September 5th of this year, the supposed president of this country sent one of his little minions to announce the end of the DACA program. This decision has put the lives of over 800,000 young individuals in limbo. I know I speak for several of us when I say that we feel betrayed by the very government that's supposed to protect us. We don't know where our future lies. I'm afraid that without DACA, I will no longer be able to serve my community in the capacity that I want to or I find fulfilling. Without DACA, I lose the ability to support my parents who are now back in Mexico and who had to decide between staying here and watching their grandchildren grow up or go back home and care for their aging loved ones and bury them. I gotta be honest with you. Every now and then I feel weak. Every now and then that undocumented, unafraid spirit, that fire, it dims for a bit as I see the political games that this administration plays with the lives of my community and how it reminds us every day that we're not welcomed here. Every now and then I call my mom back home and I don't really tell her how I'm feeling exactly, but you know, moms know everything. She could tell. She could sense it in me. She says, "Don't you dare think about coming back here. It's not worth it." She says, "Mijo, there's nothing here for you. Even without papers, you're better off over there." And then I remember, not that I ever forgotten, but I really dwelled into the early memories of our struggle, our very first few years here, everything my parents had to endure in order for me to be where I am. I think about how we've been here before, and how if I want to make sure that their sacrifices don't go in vain, I need to continue fighting. And there is a fight to fight. Many battles lie ahead. And if I've learned anything during my time here, is that we can't do it alone. I can't do it alone. It's really going to take all of us, all of you present in this room right now. Just like you were there when we fought for the most progressive reproductive health bill in the nation. Yeah. Just like you were there when we fought for Oregon to become the 7th state in the nation to provide healthcare coverage to all of its children, every single one, 100%. We need you still. I need you all to contact your elected officials and also demand that they support it and pass a Clean Dream Act. One that doesn't throw our parents, the original dreamers, under the bus. One that doesn't enhance border security, separate families through immigration rates, or increases funding for detention centers. Tomorrow, I will be a really bad organizer if I don't mention this. Tomorrow at 6 in Hood River, there's a rally to pressure Greg Walden to support a Clean Dream Act. Please show up. Don't let the burden fall solely on those affected by our broken immigration system. But don't let me stop you there. When we rally to keep families together and protect them, I need you to be there with me. When we organize and advocate to ensure that Oregon, in November, continues to provide sanctuary to immigrant families and children, I need you to be there with me. And as for the next 2 months, we are fighting to protect the healthcare of all Oregonians, I need you to be there with me. Can I count on you? Thank you.
I feel like everyone is running for president, except for me. Hi, guys. How are you? This is so weird. So many of you. Fired up? Ready to go? Okay, I've always wanted to do that. Okay, hey, guys. So my name is Lindsay Murphy, and I have a kids' science show on YouTube called The Fab Lab with Crazy Aunt Lindsay. It's the first in its category to be hosted by a woman and a person of color in the history of public broadcast television. So I'm very, very proud of that. I want to tell you guys a story. So I spend a lot of time with people in my life, and people feel very comfortable to just like kind of share their heart with me, and I love that. So yesterday I was at Whole Foods, City Whole Foods, getting lunch, as I do pretty much every day, and I used to work at an ad agency that is very nearby Whole Foods. Wine and Kennedy. I love them so much. Their holiday party's tonight, and I'm going there directly after this. So anyway, and I ran into one of my bosses. I had two bosses. Well, I technically had three, but I had two really close bosses, and they knew me super well. And I'd been doing my kids' science show for, 7 years. I just celebrated the 7-year anniversary a couple of weeks ago. And so I've been doing this show since predating Wyden. run into one of my bosses, and I'm like, hey, I can't wait for, she has twins. She has one set of twins. And I'm like, hey, and her kids are like so cute and like so funny and like full of energy. And I'm like, I can't wait for your kids to be like 5 years old so they can be on my show. And she's like, but my kids are white. And I was like, say what now? And she was like, oh, well, never mind. She kind of played it off. And that's totally fine, because that was not the first time that happened to me. It happened maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago at a friend's birthday party right in this very building down at Martha's. I was at Martha's birthday party, woman I never met before, quintessential influencer mom, Portland, environment equality, And I was like, hey, your kids are adorable. Your kid is this friend of mine's best friend. Like, both of your kids should be on the show. And she reminded me that her kid was white. And I'm like, girl, check out my show before you tell me about your children. Like, just check out my show, right? So I tell you this story because what it lets me know is that even the wellest meaning white people in one of the most liberal and trying to be inclusive cities in the world still do not see that diversity and inclusion are for them too. Thanks for clapping. I was real worried about that story. I was super worried. They don't see themselves. They don't see the part that they play. Have you ever heard of, raise your hand, there's a spotlight, now I can see all of you. Raise your hand if you've ever heard of Alfred Crowley. You don't count, Leah, you're my best friend. Okay, so 2 people over here, maybe 1 over there that I missed, you in the blue hat. Hey, dude. He invented the ice cream scoop. The ice cream scooper, yeah, he's a black guy. He's a cool black guy. Not just because he invented the ice cream scoop. Raise your hand if you've ever heard of Victor Ochoa. Okay, 5 people, cool. That is a Latin American man that invented the electric brake so that trains don't murder everyone. Raise your hand if you've ever heard of Tin Liu. Tin Liu, anybody? Tin Liu is pretty awesome. Tin Liu invented Play-Doh. I give you these names to demonstrate to you that Latin American history, Black history, Asian history is not just for Black people, Asian people, and Latin people. It's for everyone, right? And so, when I experience, again, friends who still don't understand that a Black woman teaching a room full of kids science is not just a Black woman teaching a room full of children science. It's a person who is passionate about education, curiosity, the learning process, which has no color. No color. Sharing what she loves and hopefully raising the next generation of what STEM looks like. But guys, not just STEM. Now everyone close your eyes. Just close your eyeballs. I don't want to see you. I see you down here in the front row. Close your eyes. And I want to do an exercise with you, okay? I want you to forget that I was ever here. I mean, you hear my voice, but forget that I was here, right? I want you to just think of the first thing that comes to mind, the default thing. And there is zero judgment, but I want you to just do this thing for me, okay? I swear you 3. Close your eyes. Okay. In your mind's eye, I want you to envision a boardroom. And around that boardroom, I want you to just think about what faces do you see? I want you to think about a courtroom, and I want you to think about the judge, and I want you to think about the lawyer. Who do you see? I want you to think about a university setting, a college university. I want you to think about the dean of students. Think about the chair of every department. What faces do you see? Now keep your eyes closed. Keep them closed. And it's just you and me right now. Forget about who you came with. Forget about who's sitting in the row with you. This is just you and me. Raise your hand if any of the people that you envisioned were women. Raise your hand if any of those people were people of color. The first people? I'm so proud of you. Open your eyes. Because statistically and the reality, I feel like what we represent here is the ideal. We represent the ideal. What we want is for people of all shades, all genders to feel comfortable in those places. But the truth is, statistically, they don't. I think about how less than 3% of women are in the C-suite, CEOs. I think about how less than 2% of that exact same category are people of color, of any color. I think about how when you submit a resume, if your name even sounds a little bit ethnic, even a little bit ethnic, it somehow gets passed over. Intel has an amazing HR and recruiting executive, VP, I think her name is Rosalind, something or other, I can't remember what her last name is, but she's amazing. She came into Intel several years ago, and they're like, look, Roz, we have this big problem, right? We can't seem to find anyone of color to take up these engineer jobs. They just don't exist. I don't know what it is. And she's like, are you sure about that? And they're like, yeah, totally 100%. She's like, okay, this is what we're gonna do. We are going to accept resumes, and we're gonna take the names and any identifying information off of them, right? We're just gonna look at their cover letter, and we're just going to look at their qualifications. That's all we're going. Any other perceivable information is out of here. The Intel recruiting intake for engineers went from less than 1% people of color to over 60%. Which, yes, please clap for Rosalind. She makes my heart twitch, yeah. And so I brought my phone out here, not because I'm a millennial that can't not be away from my phone for too long, but because I wanted to share a tweet that I got from you. So who here has heard of DazzleCon? Yeah. Okay, so last week I was at DazzleCon. I said a couple of things, God knows what. And someone tweeted me this literally 6 or 7 minutes ago. Can't get this out of my mind. You cannot be what you cannot see, said by Aunt Lindsay at DazzleCon. How many aspiring #changemakers are being prevented from achieving their dreams because of invisibility? Promise. We will see you, and we will keep shining a light on you. So, yeah, what I want to kind of wrap up in saying is that while us in here represent the ideal, we represent the hope, we represent the next page, there are still 100-fold outside of this room, just in this city, of people who do not see or appreciate, understand, or believe the contributions or capability of people of color and women. So while I would love to ask you to just watch my show all day long, which you totally should do, and encourage kids, and this is the other thing, kids are just kids, right? We impart on them what we believe. I'm feeling pretty lucky to be in a room full of you guys right now, but what I know is that we live in a city full of people who don't believe the same thing that we do yet. Children are like clay. They're like Play-Doh. They're just shapeless. I mean, they're adorable, but they're like shapeless. They're like aimless. They don't know what's happening. They don't have dreams. Like they just like are like, candy. Like that's what their life is. But they grow into adults, guys. They grow into men that sexually harass women at work because they think it's okay. They grow into members of the KKK. I know, I host a kid show. It's a little deep, right? But it's real. They grow into adults with mental barriers that are hard to break. So what I'm asking you guys to do is to do your best. If you can't unlearn what you already feel and believe, do your best not to impart your worst on kids coming up behind you, because they truly are our only hope. And not because I believe that children are our future and whatever that song says. I mean, it's true. But I remember being an awkward little girl who didn't believe that science was for her, who thought her blackness was a problem, who thought because she was a girl, she was relegated to wifehood only, and that my job was to have children. And it took me a long time. It took me almost a decade to unbelieve those things. So I'm standing before you as an adult that had to break those things off. And that hurts. It's hard. And it takes a long time. So if you guys have children, if you have grandchildren, do yourself a favor, do them a favor, and do your best to impart on them a spirit of understanding that everyone has equal capability, can do anything that they want to do, anything. And that a spirit of compassion and empathy is what you impart to them before you put any other limitations on them. I just want to say thank you so much for listening. Thanks, guys.
Thank you all for having me. My name is Israel Bear with Street Roots. And, I think I was just going to come up here and speak from my heart. I think we all know that we're living in very highly emotional and stressful times. I think from the moment we wake up every single day and turn our phone on and go about our day until the moment we're flipping through that Twitter feed at night, we feel like we're under attack, and in many ways we are. You feel like you turn in a 360-degree circle, and it feels relentless. It is relentless. And in many ways, I think that we want to believe that we can see through the fog. We want to believe that there is a better way. In fact, we know that there is a better way, but many times we can't capture that because we can't see over the horizon. But I think, over that horizon in a world that has literally feels like it's gone mad, in a nation that feels lost at sea, in a community where the media tells us that we're divided over issues ranging from homelessness to immigration, I think it's our time to be able to come together. I believe that, no matter where you're from, what your experience is, whether you're on the left side of the political spectrum or the right side, or you're a small business owner or a nonprofit or a social justice warrior, or whether you grew up in poverty or whether you were afforded comfortability and privilege in your life, that we all have the ability to move in the same direction to create change in the world. It's something that I'm very proud of. We're very proud of at Street Roots. And, the day after the election, a person on the streets walked up to me and he said, Israel, why are you so blue? I don't know. I mean, the news is pretty bad out there. And he said, well, you know what? Like it or not, I was homeless before Donald Trump. And if we don't go find some housing, I'm most likely going to be homeless after Donald Trump. And it really reminded me that the work that we do and all of our collective energy, that we're always in emotional and stressful times. We've never really been able to see through the fog, but we know that together with love, with endurance, with the ability to believe in one another, that we can do great things. And so I'm very honored to be here tonight. I want to challenge each and every one of you, what now? So I'm going to challenge each and every one of you. I want you to raise your hand. So every person in this room is going to buy somebody behind them a cup of coffee in the morning. We're going to start there. Is that good? Everybody raise their hand? Come on. We're going to have uncomfortable conversations this holiday season, but we're going to stop and listen to people with different points of view. We're going to look homeless people in the eye and acknowledge that they're human beings. We're all together going to be able to help an elderly person across the street. We have to stop and take care of one another. We all go through the trials and tribulations of life, and sometimes we're not always the best people that we can be individually, but together we can overcome and do great things. So soak in what you've heard tonight. The fight continues. We march on, and we will continue every single day in this fight. So thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, how you feeling? Woohoo! Fired up and ready to go. I am so honored to close out tonight's program. I can't thank you enough for being here this evening. Thank you for letting me be part of this experience. I'm ready to go forth and come back and report what we've all been working on. When we come back next year, evidently I'm doing a La Croix ad. Sorry, I'm a little pregnant and real thirsty all the time. So some quick reminders. I want you to make sure you go on your way out because we're running a little over, which is great. We're going to go check in with the folks that we've met here at all the booths, at all the great organizations on this floor and the third floor. Give them your contact information, clean up your space around you, go forth and get some shit done. Thank you so much and have a great night, everyone.